workflow and time management for developmental editors. The first thing you're going to do as a DE after training week is send introductory messages to each of your writers. They will have already had several sessions with Professor Custer to get them primed and ready for writing. We come on the scene around week 4 of the program, I believe. So, what are the things you spend time doing in a typical week of work? Here are the main components. The weekly message. Every week, you post a message to each of your writers in their updates room. The first one you send is your introductory message to introduce yourself. Then, as you go from week to week, there are some common elements to the weekly message, and we'll give you a template to work with and modify. And sometimes we'll give you very specific information that needs to be included in a weekly message that has to do with key dates of the program. It doesn't matter if a writer is completely ghosting you for weeks on end. Every writer gets a weekly message every week because we want to show that we are reaching out even if they are not responding.
You meet with your writers on Zoom, and you must record those meetings. And the recording is going to get posted to your YouTube channel as an unlisted video on an unlisted playlist. This way the writer can access the video later for reference. We have a whole other video on how to set up your YouTube channel with the unlisted playlist and doing unlisted videos, so be sure to watch that.
In the beginning, you need to push hard to get writers to commit to a weekly call, ideally at a day and time that stays the same. But this isn't always possible. As you go along, some writers will only need or want a bi-weekly call, but try to start out with a weekly call. Other writers will just ghost you and not be productive at all. It happens. Now, how long should these calls be? Well, as long as they need to be, really. It's going to vary from 15 minutes to 30 or 40 minutes depending on the writer and their needs. 20 to 30 minutes is the average. Call summaries. After you meet with a writer, you need to post a call summary in their updates room in which you tag the writer, tag your wrangler, and tag Shonda. Your call summary needs to give a paragraph of detail summarizing what you talked about.
You must also spell out very clearly what the writer's goals are for the week. Specific, actionable, attainable writing goals each week are a must. Now, the weekly message time frame is very specific. It begins Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and it ends 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday. So that's the window in which you must post all your weekly messages. Now, if you have calls with writers after 3 p.m. on Thursday or on Friday or on Monday, if you keep good notes, you can still do a combination weekly message combined with your call summary message. It's a very efficient way to do this work, and I encourage you to do that.
Review work. You got to make sure you keep up with review work. Now, some writers will be more productive early on than other writers. Some will dump a lot of words, some won't write anything at all. When you have multiple writers submitting new work in a given week, try to spread the love in terms of reviewing work from multiple writers as opposed to just focusing on one writer and shortchanging the others. You want to do your review work when and where you can minimize distractions because you need to focus. Now, there are 2 videos for you to watch about how to actually do your review work, so be sure to check those out. You can find those videos in the DE Documents library. Go to the folder called Resources for DEs, then into the folder called Additional Resources, and there you will find a document listing all the different DE videos. The weekly DE meeting. You want to plan your schedule so you can participate in the weekly group DE Zoom meeting we hold every Wednesday at 12 noon Central Time. That would be 1 p.m. Eastern Time. These are critical to attend because important announcements are made that you need to know about, and it's always a lively forum where DEs ask questions, we troubleshoot issues and problems, and so forth. This is also where you can enjoy really feeling like you're a part of a community of writing and editing professionals, and it's pretty cool.
If you are unable to attend the weekly DE meeting on Wednesday during the Zoom session, you are required to watch the recording that will be posted in the DE chat room. And we will verify that you have watched the recording because you're going to have to PM your Wrangler the Amazon book link that Shonda Elaine shares at some point during the meeting. She'll hold up a book and she'll say, this is the book you need to PM the Amazon link to your Wrangler.
Managing the time you have for DE work. Now, how much time do you have to do this work? In other words, how many hours can you bill out on your invoice? The general rule of thumb is 1.5 hours per writer per week. So let's say you have 10 writers. Then you should plan on spending 15 hours per week on the work that I just outlined. Each pay period is 2 weeks. So that would be a maximum of 30 hours in a pay period for a DE who has 10 writers. But that 1.5 hours of time per writer is not how much time you spend on each writer in a given week, because that's going to vary from week to week. Think of that 15 hours a week as a pool of time you have available to do all the work you need to do. Now, you might have a week where 2 writers both drop several thousand words of new writing on you, and your other 8 writers don't post anything at all. So those 2 writers who posted a lot of new writing are going to get more of your time that week, right? You put the time where it's needed most, but without leaving any given writer high and dry in a week. Now, sometimes you might get a lot of words dumped on you by multiple writers, especially around key word count goals and dates. If this happens and you need extra hours to complete your work, any overage must be approved in advance. You can't bill more hours than you are allotted without permission. You will not get paid for unauthorized overtime. Notify your Wrangler if you need to go over on your hours, with a number of how many extra hours you need and why. And realize this is something that should happen only very rarely. Tracking your time on your invoice. You have to accurately track your time in order to put it on your invoice. What you don't want to do is happily go about your work for 2 weeks and then suddenly realize it's invoicing day and frantically try to recreate what you did for the past 2 weeks and how much time you spent on each task. That's a disaster. Track your time as you go. When you sit down to do DE work, have your invoice document open in a separate tab and note the time you start a task, and then when you're done with that task, put the end time and the total number of minutes. Easy! Oh, and here's a pro tip. Do not bother downloading and using the desktop version of Quip. It's horrible. It might seem great at first, but it inevitably deteriorates over time and becomes increasingly frustrating and more trouble than it's worth. Just use the web-based version in your browser of choice, because it's much better. Trust me. Now, there's another video available for you on the details of how the timesheet works and how to use it. Just look for that in the DE Documents Library, Resources for DEs folder, Additional Resources folder, and the document with the list of all the different DE videos. So that's my take on the workflow and time management approach that will help you be a successful DE. And I'll see you in the weekly DE meeting.